The modern-day animosity between Israel and Iran is a complex tapestry of geopolitical shifts, nuclear ambitions, and proxy wars. But for many, the roots of this conflict run deeper, intertwined with ancient prophecies found within the pages of the Bible. This is the story of how ancient scriptures are seen to foretell a modern-day conflict. The focus of this interpretation lies in the book of Ezekiel, written over 2,500 years ago. Chapter 38 describes a future invasion of Israel by a great coalition of nations, led by a figure named Gog of Magog. Among the allies listed alongside Gog is a nation identified as Persia. For centuries, Persia was the name by which the world knew Iran. It wasn't until 1935 that the nation officially adopted the name Iran. This direct mention of Persia in Ezekiel's prophecy is the cornerstone of the belief that the Bible predicted Iran's role in an end-times conflict with Israel. The prophecy describes this coalition coming against a restored Israel, a nation living in unwalled villages, seemingly at peace. The text says they will come like a storm ... like a cloud to cover the land. The motives are described as a desire to plunder and loot. However, the prophecy does not end with Israel's destruction. According to Ezekiel, the invasion is ultimately thwarted by divine intervention. The scripture says God will strike down the invading armies on the mountains of Israel, demonstrating power to all nations. While geopolitical analysts point to the 1979 Iranian Revolution as the turning point in modern relations, for those who look to the Bible, the current tensions are but a prelude. They see the present-day alliances and the rhetoric of annihilation not as new developments, but as the slow, inexorable fulfillment of a prophecy made millennia ago. The true origin of the hatred, they argue, is not just political, but spiritual and prophetic. Before you go, think about what we've just seen. For thousands of years, the Bible has mentioned Persia, the ancient nation that corresponds to modern Iran. Long before modern politics, long before global news headlines, Scripture was already describing spiritual forces influencing nations and shaping history. In the book of Daniel, we are given a rare glimpse behind the curtain of the physical world. Daniel prayed and fasted for understanding, and when the angel finally appeared, he revealed something shocking. He said he had been delayed for 21 days because he was opposed by a powerful spiritual entity called the Prince of Persia. This was not a human king. It was a spiritual power connected to the Persian kingdom. Only when the archangel Michael came to assist was the messenger able to break through and reach Daniel. That single passage reveals something profound. The Bible teaches that spiritual battles can influence earthly kingdoms. History may appear to be driven by politics, leaders, and armies, but Scripture suggests there is another layer that most people never see. And that raises a fascinating question. If Persia was involved in spiritual conflict in Daniel's time, could those spiritual dynamics still influence the region today? The Bible also mentions Persia again in Ezekiel 38. In a prophecy describing a future coalition of nations surrounding Israel. Among those nations listed is Persia. For many Bible readers, this raises an intriguing possibility that the tensions we see in the Middle East today may be connected to prophetic patterns written thousands of years ago. Now, it's important to understand something. The Bible does not call us to fear these events. In fact, Scripture repeatedly reminds us that God remains sovereign over nations, history, and the future. Empires rise. Empires fall. But the biblical story continues moving toward the fulfillment of God's purposes. The same Bible that described Persia also described the rise and fall of Babylon, Greece, and Rome long before those events unfolded in history. That's why many believers see prophecy not as speculation, but as a reminder that history ultimately moves according to God's plan. And that is what makes studying these passages so powerful. They remind us that the Bible is not just an ancient book. It is a record of God interacting with human history across thousands of years, sometimes through kings, sometimes through prophets, and sometimes through unseen spiritual battles. But the deeper message of Scripture goes beyond geopolitics or prophecy charts. At its heart, the Bible tells the story of God's relationship with humanity. It tells the story of faith, redemption, and the unfolding plan that runs from Genesis all the way to Revelation. The prophets wrote about nations, wars, and future events. But they also wrote about hope. Hope that one day justice will prevail. Hope that darkness will not have the final word. And hope that God's promises will ultimately be fulfilled. So when we read passages about Persia, Israel, and spiritual conflict, we are not just studying ancient history. We are looking at pieces of a much larger story. A story that has been unfolding for thousands of years, and a story that many believe is still unfolding today. If you enjoy exploring these deep biblical mysteries, prophecies, ancient texts, and the hidden connections within Scripture, make sure you subscribe to the Tanakh. Because on this channel, we don't just read the Bible, we explore the mysteries behind it. And in the next video, we're going to uncover another passage that has puzzled readers for centuries. A passage that may reveal something shocking about the unseen world described in Scripture. You won't want to miss it. Subscribe to the Tanakh, and I'll see you in the next video.